Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Real and the Rare. My name is Scott Morganroth of Motor City Madmouth, along with my co-host Xavier McKnight. How you doing, Xavier, on this Friday night?
I'm doing well, Scott. It's a very beautiful evening here in Southwest Florida. We were able to overcome some pretty heavy storm damage in this area last night, and everything has calmed down, and everything appears to be back to normal. How are things on your end?
They're okay. We've run across a little bit of moist weather, but then again, you live in the state of Florida. Would you expect anything else?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, you want to lead off the program by paying tribute to a particular individual? Go ahead.
Yes, Scott. Earlier this week, we learned about the passing of Green Bay Packers great and Hall of Fame defensive back, Pro Football Hall of Fame defensive back, Willie Wood. He passed away on Monday at the age of 83 in Washington, D.C. In his pro football career, he was an 8-time Pro Bowler. He made the first team All-Pro team 5 times, and he was a 4-time second-team All-Pro as well. He led the NFL in interceptions in 1962. He was a 5-time NFL champion, including being a winning member of the very first 2 Super Bowl champions with the Green Bay Packers in Super Bowl I and Super Bowl II. He's also a member of the NFL 1960 team. He's in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame as well as the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And some interesting history about Mr. Wood. He's also a pioneer in football for African Americans. He played college football for the USC Trojans, and he was actually the first African American quarterback to play in what is now known as the Pac-12 Conference. Scott, you obviously have been around on this earth a lot longer than I have, so I just wanted to pay my respect to Mr. Wood and to his family and thank him for everything that he did while he was here on this earth. But do you have any memories that you would like to share just of watching him play, especially you being a Detroit Lions fan and that rivalry with the Packers and the Lions?
You really had to remind me of that? Really? Now, he was tough on the Lions, but he was a heck of a player. That's what I've got to say. And I got to tell you something. Last year at the Taste of the NFL, I had a chance to go ahead and do a story video on Randall McDaniel. And anybody in what Chris Berman calls the NFC Norris division wreaks havoc on a lot of those teams. But you know what? More power to Willie Wood. We actually had a chance to go ahead and meet Donnie Anderson as well as Willie Buchanan. And, the Packers have an incredible history. It's, again, the only thing I feel bad about is we never saw Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. But outside of that, you know what, more power to him. His legacy is etched in stone. That's why he is immortalized in Canton, Ohio. More power to him. Rest in peace, Willie Wood.
Yes, rest in peace, Mr. Wood. And all right, now, Scott, let's get into it. We're talking trades today, trades in the MLB, trades in the NBA, and who knows? Maybe some news will come down from the NFL while we're here on the air. So let's begin by going into it because the news broke earlier this week and it sent shockwaves around the baseball world. But now there's a halt on things. But we'll begin by saying that Mookie-Betts was initially traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers earlier this week. I believe this happened on Tuesday night to be exact. Mookie-Betts and also pitcher David Price involved in a trade with the Dodgers and the Red Sox, and the Minnesota Twins were added in as a third team to the trade, and in the trade they received Kenta Maeda, and the Boston Red Sox simply received some young players and prospects to help build with that team's future going forward. However, as early as yesterday, we learned that this trade is actually now not completed and things are on a halt because the Red Sox want more out of the deal. And from what I read this morning, Scott, what they're asking for the Minnesota Twins to include in the deal now leads me to believe that the deal between these 3 teams is not going to happen. But somehow, some way, I still believe Mookie-Betts will end up being a Los Angeles Dodger. What the Red Sox are now also asking the Minnesota Twins for is another top 10 draft pick. I don't believe Minnesota is going to give in to that. So I don't believe that Kenta Maeda will be going to the Minnesota Twins. I believe they're going to have to find another third team to do this. But I do believe that somehow, someway, Mookie Betts will be donning that Dodger blue this year. Your thoughts?
Oh, I think so too. The X factor is you have David Price and a lot of money being exchanging hands. I know the Red Sox have agreed to eat a large amount of money, I believe, of, was it David Price's contract in that deal? So, these things, it's a big blockbuster. It's definitely destined to happen. Cooler heads prevail. You just have to find out that the Red Sox have come out of the ether, realize we need a little bit more than what we're getting for a guy who's definitely in the prime of his career. So that thing called cold feet, maybe a little bit, but not much. I think that, what's his name, Tony Clark is trying to push things along to get this thing done as spring training is upon us. But it'll ultimately get done. If the Red Sox just want another player too. Let's not kid ourselves, Xavier. The Red Sox may be a decent team, but I think they're headed toward rebuild mode, and it could get very ugly for those at the club that resides at Fenway Park.
Well, it's definitely going to get ugly because they placed themselves in a situation where they also signed some older players. Now, this happened under Dave Dombrowski and his leadership with the organization. They have some contracts that are basically a stranglehold onto the organization right now. And the players who were initially signed to those deals going into 2017 and 2018, they're not performing at the level that they were performing at when they were initially given those contracts. And as a result of that, it's now hard to move on from those deals. But I do believe that Mookie Betts will end up being a Dodger. But, Scott, I do have to say this right now because there were some pretty outraged baseball fans in the social media world when this news broke. I would just like to remind everyone, the Dodgers make some type of blockbuster move either every offseason or every trade deadline. And right when you think they're going to make the move that's just going to take over the baseball world, they end every single year after 1988 without hoisting the World Series. It's not the end of the world, folks. Let's see how this is going to work first.
Well, they're in Hollywood, Xavier. What do you expect? Every team's trying to make a splash in Southern California. There's a big amount of competition for that entertainment dollar. It's safe to say the Dodgers certainly can draw a lot of people. They've proven year in and year out they can do it. Yeah, the drought of 1988 certainly lingers, and they've had a lot of near misses and so forth. And a lot of it's attributed to superstars that can't perform in the postseason, as well as a manager who's a great regular season manager, but has yet been able to close a deal. And the one I'm recently referring to now is Dave Roberts. So, we'll see. The Dodgers are in desperation mode. They can whine about all the cheating that they want, but in the end, you know what? Cheating or no cheating, the object of baseball is put bat on ball and throw strikes and get outs, no matter how you get around to doing it. So they're desperate there, but I think there's a lot of things that actually have to play out in this situation before I'm really going to formulate an opinion any further than that.
Well, Scott, I will say this as well. There was another trade that took place just almost about 30 minutes later on that same night, and I actually slightly like this trade a little more than the Mookie Betts to the Dodgers trade, and that was Jock Peterson being traded over from the Dodgers to the Angels. Obviously, we knew that one of those outfielders was going to have to be moved from Mookie Betts with the star that he comes with and everything in that nature. But I like this trade, and we haven't received any information about that trade being held up at the moment. But I like this trade because it gives Mike Trout someone to have out there in the outfield with him. He is going to bring good offensive production. He was one of the rising young stars in the MLB just a few years ago. And with the hiring of Joe Madden and the structure of the Angels organization and the way that it looks like it's headed, I believe that this could be a nice resurrection fit for Jock Peterson and the way that the Angels are building their organization. You also have to keep in mind that they added Anthony Rendon in the offseason. I like the way that organization is looking, too. It's going to be an interesting baseball season in L.A. all around this year.
Well, that Peterson trade won't go through, though, Xavier, until the Betts one goes through. I think there's a domino effect. But Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, will get that thing done. Right now, it's just a matter of all three parties or whatever team gets involved to get it straightened out. That trade will happen. Obviously, there's a couple little stumbling blocks, but Every time a team doesn't get as much as they think, until anybody, they can always use medicals and whatnot. Xavier, let me tell you a story many, many years ago when the Detroit Pistons sent Dennis Rodman to the Houston Rockets. I believe Robert Horry was one of the players, and I'm trying to remember the other guy that was involved in that trade. But because of medicals, the trade got canceled, and then they ended up trading Rodman to the Spurs for Sean Elliott. Matt Bullard, I think, is who it was. And that trade didn't go through. So the Pistons fans, I'll never forget, too, because, Horry and Bullard were waiting to play, and all of a sudden, because of the medicals, so was that the means for somebody to back out of a trade that probably shouldn't have been made? I don't know. That stuff happens all the time, but this one I do think will get done. But the Peterson situation won't occur, Xavier, until the Betts transaction is finalized and that these guys are able, whatever has to get worked out will get worked out.
Thank you for bringing further clarity to me on that situation.
Sure.
I do appreciate that because I wasn't sure how that situation was working. But I want to talk a little about the Boston Red Sox here before we move on to talk about the NBA trade deadline and just how far the mighty have fallen. I mean, my goodness. They went in 2018, winning 108 games, winning the World Series. That was their fourth World Series in 14 years at that point. And now this is more than likely going to be a completely unrecognizable baseball team from what we're used to seeing them being, unless somehow, some way, a surprise does happen. But I don't see it happening this year. Not with the Tampa Bay Rays being in that division, and, of course, the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays, who have a lot of young talent as well. I don't know what to make out of the Orioles yet. I'd like to watch them play first before I give an opinion on them.
Well, your Orioles are a couple of years away. The Boston Red Sox fell into the trap that every team that Dave Dombrowski leaves got the farm system, get players that can play right now, pay them a lot of money, and all of a sudden your franchise is set back by a few years. No, with all due respect, though, they got the World Championships to show for it, so they don't have to worry about a drought that'll last longer than who knows how long. But mission accomplished. John Henry doesn't want to pay the luxury tax anymore. And they have a decent ball club, but decent isn't going to be the standards for which the Boston Red Sox, are known for. But the reality of the situation is the Tampa Bay Rays are a team that continues to build within, and they find a way to use veteran players to fill in with some of the young players that they bring up with an incredible farm system. So, are the Rays the model franchise for how you develop players? Probably. The Boston Red Sox, unfortunately, for those folks out in New England, better days are not ahead of them at all. I don't think so. And when they face the New York Yankees, a team that's spending a lot of money this offseason, it can get ugly out there. It really can. But the Baltimore Orioles, we'll see. That was a tough situation. I hated to see Buck Showalter, leave with the atrocious season that he had with the body of work that he had in Baltimore. But you know what? Buck got paid a lot of money. And I think he's got food on his table, so I don't think he's worried about it.
He's definitely not. But, Scott, before we move into the NBA trade deadline, I do have to ask this question. I'm going to pose this.
Okay.
Because for the past 20 years, we have seen the city of Boston, the state of Massachusetts, on top of the sports world. And all four of the different major team sports in this country, whether it's the Boston Bruins, the Boston Celtics, the Boston Red Sox, and, of course, the vaunted New England Patriots. Are we possibly about to head into a year and a transition period where we are actually going to see Boston in a bit of a state of flux that we're not used to seeing them in? Because the more the days go by, the more I just get a feeling Tom Brady will not return to New England. I don't believe they have a viable backup plan for him. The Celtics are what the Celtics are. They're a borderline NBA title contender right now. I don't know if I trust them to make it to the NBA championship. I don't trust the Boston Bruins as much as I did just a few years ago. And, of course, we just spoke on the Boston Red Sox and the state of rebuilding that we believe that organization is headed in. Are we about to head in that direction in the world of sports, where Boston may no longer be the cream of the crop anymore?
Well, let me just put it this way. Will they have championships? Probably not. But when you look to my hometown of Detroit, all four teams are really struggling, and they're very bad. So these things run in circles, and cycles, I should say. Are they going to, it's hard to say. The Patriots need some playmakers around Brady. Tom's going to get paid if they want him there. The Red Sox, I think, are headed for a problem. The Bruins are still very competitive. And, of course, the Celtics are always good. Are they deep? Hey, listen, you know what? The folks in Boston will get their money's worth, and I don't think anybody's really going to go ahead and sweat it. There's other cities that have bigger championship droughts than those folks that are in the Boston area, that's for sure. I don't think they're going to worry about it. Not as much as most people think.
All right. And with that being said, let's move into the NBA trade deadline. I thought the NBA trade deadline was going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors this year. I didn't think any big moves were going to be made. But Tuesday night, boy, was I proven wrong. And it all began with a mega trade between the Atlanta Hawks, the Houston Rockets, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was capped off with the Houston Rockets sending Clint Capella to the Atlanta Hawks. And, well, this was actually a 4-team trade as well. The Denver Nuggets were also involved in it. So Clint Capella is headed to the Atlanta Hawks. I really like that move. We're going to speak on that in a minute. The Houston Rockets acquired Robert Covington, and the Denver Nuggets have acquired. Well, let me go into who the Minnesota Timberwolves acquired first. They acquired Malik Beasley and Juan Hernan Gomez. Hernan Gomez has been moved around for quite a few years now. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, they simply the best quality they acquired out of this deal was a lot of draft picks. This was a 12-player deal, the largest trade deal in the NBA since Patrick Ewing was traded from the New York Knicks to the Seattle Supersonics in 2000. And when I think about Clint Capella going to Atlanta, Scott, and I just think about their general manager, and I just look at how the team is set up now, the first thing that ran through my mind was they are seriously trying to build the model that the Golden State Warriors built during the 2010s decade. Because when I look at the Clint Capella trade, it reminds me of when the Golden State Warriors traded for Andrew Bogut. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Hawks are headed in the right direction. They are. They're probably a couple of years away, but, they are, and more power to them. Because I'll tell you what, the Atlanta fan base has only had the Braves to cheer about lately. They don't have hockey. And the Falcons haven't been that great in recent years either. So more power to the Hawks. I don't know what type of a fan base the Hawks have ever had over the years. But, more if they can make a few more quality moves, who knows, we might hear a little bit more about them. But the Golden State model is not a bad model to duplicate if you can do it, and you have the assets to do it, and you have the management that's committed towards doing it.
I definitely agree with that. Now let's move on to the Houston Rockets portion of this trade. They're acquiring Robert Covington in the trade. I like Robert Covington. He's a great player. He's a great wing player. He definitely can shoot that three ball. He can also play defense a little. But the problem that I have with the Houston Rockets and this whole entire trade was you no longer have a quality big man on the floor. So they believe that they are now going to go into championship mode by playing this small ball formula. And I don't doubt that the small ball formula works, Scott. We've seen it work in many different places. But they play in the Western Conference. And when you look at teams like the Lakers, even though last night is not a very good example, but when you look at the height that the Lakers have, you look at the quality of stars that the Clippers have, the height that the Utah Jazz have, what the Denver Nuggets have, and even what the Dallas Mavericks have. They're struggling a little right now because Luka Doncic's out with an injury. He'll be back soon. But you look at Porzingis, and you look at them being able to acquire Willie Cauley-Stein after Dwight Powell went down with a ruptured Achilles earlier in January. We wish him all the best as well. I just don't believe this is a formula that's going to work long term. And I am somebody who is not completely against analytics. But, Scott, the basketball that I grew up loving and watching, you had a big man down low who you dumped it to, who would control the paint, grab the rebounds, and everything like that. And I still believe that there is a place in basketball for that. And even though the Rockets did go in and defeat the Lakers last night, basically with a team that was under 6'6", I don't believe that's going to be something that's going to be able to be sustained long term and even throughout the duration of this season.
Okay, you don't believe? You know what? There's no way to work. This isn't high school. This isn't college, Xavier. This is the NBA. And you would talk about a man in the middle. You're talking about a guy here that covered the Detroit Pistons of bad boys, Xavier. And we didn't have guys that were 6'6". We had guys like Adrian Dantley that were 6'5" that can shoot the basketball. And we had guys like Mark Aguirre that were about that size, you know. But there's no way to work. But then again, you're talking about the NBA nowadays where it's a patty cake baker's man league where, you know, they frown upon physical play. So, I don't know, is this a way for Mike D'Antoni to save his job? Who knows? I don't think he's going to be employed by the Rockets next year anyways. So, to me, all I can say, good luck. Not happening. No chance. And that conference is way too deep anyways. There's no way that the Rockets will do it. I could be wrong, but I'm not holding my bets and hedging them this time.
Well, I definitely don't believe you're wrong on that because, I mean, I believe this the way that you do. The NBA these days is definitely a patty cake baker's man type of league. I don't enjoy most of the basketball that we watch these days. A lot of the basketball that we watch is just not the proper way of playing basketball. Analytics tries to tell you that it's smarter, but to me, I miss the days of the physical play. I miss the days of the hand check. I just miss those types of days. I mean, I understand that there are some people out there who enjoy seeing teams get in 125 to 120 point shootouts. I don't necessarily enjoy that. I miss the days of hard physical defense and going down in the paint and really having to work for your points.
Let me
With
say
that
this.
being said, go ahead.
Let me tell you this, Xavier. I haven't watched one NBA game this year, and the odds of me watching an NBA game are pretty slim. I have no interest in the sport. I only talk about it as when my co-hosts decide to do it. So therefore, considering it is a major sport or a sport, I give it to my co-host to do it. Me personally, I think I will watch a hockey game all day long. You know, I breathe the NFL and Major League Baseball. Those are sports and motor sports. But you know what? To me, I won't watch a game if I can help it. It's absolutely boring. I don't like the style of play. There's too much drama surrounding the league. There really is. And I prefer they keep their mouth shut and play basketball. But in this day and age, it doesn't happen. But I'm sorry, Xavier. I'm turned off by the NBA. To your credit, I'll talk about it, no problem. But it's not my deal anymore. Maybe one day it will be when they start to play real basketball, not what you call playground basketball, where it's a matter of a jump shooters league. I don't even know what their all-star format is and really don't frankly care about it, to be honest with you. But that's not the way I was raised to watch basketball. No way.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the All-Star Game formula, it is a complete joke. I won't go into details about it.
Right.
But as far as getting back to watching basketball the way that we actually love to watch it, when I look at a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, he gives me hope that will actually happen again one day soon. And, you know, you spoke about Mike D'Antoni. I believe he's all but gone anyway. I believe the only way he was going to keep his job coming into this year was win the championship. That was the only way I felt like he was going to keep his job. I don't believe the Houston Rockets are equipped to win the NBA championship. I believe they'll be getting a new coach at the end of this season. But I'm also looking at Daryl Morey in this situation, and he is still under hot fire with the NBA because of the controversial situation that happened with China earlier in October. And the NBA lost hundreds of millions of dollars because of that entire controversy. So he's trying to also put in a ploy to save his job as well because it's not as safe as it used to be. But, yes, I don't believe the small ball formula is going to work. All power to the Atlanta Hawks for finally moving in the right direction. Hopefully they continue to do so. And as you said, good luck to the Houston Rockets. I believe the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to get a nice player in Malik Beasley. He's a hard-working player. He's one of the few players that was young in the league that the now late, great Kobe Bryant actually took under his wing, invited him over to his Mamba Academy and told him, you're here because of your work ethic. He's known to actually be out on the court and working out his personal game 2 hours before shoot-around and tip-off and all of those things. So I believe that the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to get a nice player in all of this. Now, let me move on to another trade that took place on Wednesday night. And, Scott, this is a team that's closer to you in your area, being ran by a man that we all have great respect for. I'm talking about Pat Riley and the Miami Heat organization, who have been a surprise in the NBA to me this year, the way that they've been able to play. And Pat Riley basically went for the entire gusto on Wednesday night, with the Miami Heat successfully trading for Andre Iguodala from the Memphis Grizzlies. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, let me say one thing about Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's one of the few good things about the NBA. I can't find many, but he's one of the few, and I'm happy that he's in Milwaukee because it just shows you don't have to have a major market with a first-class individual like him. I'll just leave it at that with him. In terms of this area, Pat Riley's a genius. First of all, forget about Iguodala. He got rid of Dion Waiters. It's very hard to get suspended for the Miami Heat because they run such a tight ship. But to be able to get Iguodala and get rid of Dion Waiters, to me, is a really cool. And I guess there's a sucker born every minute, and the Grizzlies were one of them. More power to them.
Well, here's what I will tell you about that deal, and to be specific about the deal, it was completed on yesterday, on Thursday morning, and what the Miami Heat in the deal, they acquired Andre Iguodala, Solomon Hill, and Jay Crowder. Those are going to be three great defensive guys on that team. What the Grizzlies received in return was Dion Waiters, Justice Winslow, and James Johnson. James Johnson and Dion Waiters have had internal issues with the team all throughout this season. Justice Winslow was a piece that I'm pretty sure the Miami Heat organization had a hard time parting with. But when you have a team that the Miami Heat have this year, who has been a surprise in this league, being led by Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, who's taken great strides this year, and guys that no one really knew about, Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero, you have to do everything you can to go for all of it. And as you said, Pat Riley's a genius. But when it comes down to the Dion Waiters situation, the Memphis Grizzlies are actually expected to waive him from the roster.
Or are they? Okay. Did not know that.
They are actually expected to waive him from the roster. The only player in the deal who Memphis is expected to actually keep is Justice Winslow.
Okay.
They may keep James Johnson on the roster simply for roster purposes because they need the space to fill out the roster.
Okay.
No promises that he's actually going to see the floor for them. But Dion Waiters' NBA playing days may indeed be over.
Well, if you can't make it in Miami, you're in trouble. And I should point out that Kevin Durant is everything that's wrong with the NBA, because there's a guy that isn't playing. He still can't keep his mouth shut about his exit from Golden State wherever he's gone. So I don't want to sit here and talk about too much negativity in a league that doesn't have a whole lot of positivity, but I don't have to. I think the news and the events speak for themselves. But yeah, so my question is, does anybody want Dion Waiters? Well, you have a lot of teams that could get him. The question is, who will take him? I don't know. Couldn't make it in Miami, but I think the trade's a good one for Miami. I really do. Iguodala is a champion. He did a heck of a job with Golden State. He's a consummate professional, Xavier. He's probably everything that's right with this league. Once upon a time, there was a guy named Allen Iverson that had those same initials, AI, but Andre Iguodala, he's made the AI initials very, very good initials. So more power to him. I wish the Heat well.
Well, I also really like them acquiring Jay Crowder in this deal too, because Jay Crowder a few years ago on the Boston Celtics, a really big piece of a team that was making strides in the Eastern Conference, and that was shocking everyone. He was giving LeBron James trouble at times on the defensive end when LeBron was with Cleveland. So I really like this deal with both players. I like Solomon Hill, but I don't know if the Miami Heat are actually going to keep him. We're going to have to see how that goes. And I also should include that the Minnesota Timberwolves later joined this deal. It became a 3-team deal. And Gorgie Dang is now going to be a Memphis Grizzly. I really like that deal for them. Memphis is making steps going in the right direction as well, one of the losing teams in the league. But I really like all of the young talent they have on that team being led by John Morant and Jarrett Jackson Jr. I really like the direction that they're going in, but look out for Miami. I definitely believe that they have put themselves in a huge position to contend for the NBA championship this season. Now, let's talk about a trade and a team that you used to cover, Scott. The Detroit Pistons traded Andre Drummond to the Cleveland Cavaliers yesterday. And on the side of the Cleveland Cavaliers, this made absolutely no sense whatsoever to me, unless there's something that's going to happen within the next few days of maybe a buyout of Tristan Thompson's contract, and he will no longer be on that roster and he'll be headed elsewhere. Other than that, this deal absolutely makes no sense to me. Cleveland needed to go out and get perimeter shooting and defense if they were going to do anything. Andre Drummond is a great player in this league, but he is known for controlling the paint and getting rebounds. He's the rebound king of the NBA right now. He's not stepping out beyond 10 feet and knocking down shots. It's just not going to happen. The deal made absolutely no sense to me from the Cleveland Cavaliers standpoint. And as far as the Detroit Pistons go, they are officially in rebuild mode. They acquired John Henson, Brandon Knight, and a second-round draft pick in 2023 in this deal. I right now, I can't pick a winner in that trade.
Well, it's a salary dump, Xavier. That's all it is. Okay, but the reason it's a salary dump because Stan Van Gundy, who's no longer in the league, decided to trade for a guy by the name of Blake Griffin, okay? And as a result, Blake Griffin has lived up to his ability to miss games due to injury, and as a result, they've been injured all year. So Andre Drummond, to me, would have fit the old school type of play where you have defense and rebounding, which to me was great many years ago. Does he fit in today's NBA? No. I mean, but it's a salary dump. The Pistons, I don't know. I hope they get it figured out. They're a very proud franchise. They've quietly won 3 championships over the years. They haven't been the same the last 10 or 15 years, but they've had a good history, but it's a salary dump. Yeah, the Cavaliers, well, you know what? They're on the hook for $27 million and then $28 if they renew the option, unless he decides to go out. But there's a place for Andre Drummond in this league. Certainly not in Detroit because they're in rebuilding mode. Cleveland, I don't know what they're doing over there. John Beilein, the former Michigan coach, would probably enjoy having a talented player. And let's not lose sight of the fact that Dan Gilbert, with Michigan ties, happens to own the Cavaliers, so you have a Detroit presence there somewhere. Whether that means anything or not is anybody's wildest of imagination. But I don't know. And that trade, I don't know if there's any winners. To me, the Pistons it was a salary dump is all it was. And it remains to be seen. I've seen crazier things happen with these trades, though, Xavier. You never know. If Brandon Knight plays decent, is he worth a low-risk contract later on? What about Henson? I don't know much about him. And the second-round pick, who knows what that'll turn out to be. So, I don't know. That's interesting. But you never know. These guys, everybody that you acquire at the trade deadline, they have an audition to try to make the team next year if they think they're worth their while for a small amount of money. Hard to figure.
Yes, definitely. As you just said, we're going to have to see, and only time's going to tell how these deals are going to work out for both teams. But if I had to take a guess on it, I would believe that Andre Drummond's option does not get picked up, and he'd be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. That would just be me. As you said, there's definitely a place for him in this league. He was actually the big man I was hoping that Atlanta was going to be able to acquire. But Clint Capella's not bad, averaging 14 points and 14 rebounds this year. Definitely not bad at all to go with that option. Well, we have 2 more trades to this. Well, go ahead.
Well, all the Pistons wanted to do was make sure that they got something instead of nothing. I understand that philosophy. You want to get a return, whether it's 2 expiring contracts, frees up money, as well as a draft choice. Who knows if it'll develop anything. But let's not lose sight of the fact that once upon a time, Dennis Rodman was a second-round pick. How did that turn out? Well, go to Springfield, Massachusetts. I'll tell you how that turned out. Are there many Dennis Rodmans growing on trees in the second round? I don't know. But the Pistons are trying to get something instead of losing them for nothing. So I understand that. I don't know whether they sold thin on there. I don't know what. I know there was talk about the Hawks going after them, but they couldn't get the pieces to work. But, yeah, go on to the other couple trades.
Yeah, we have 2 more trades to discuss. I'm not going to spend much time on them. It's not really too much that needs to be said. The first one that took place yesterday between these two, the Golden State Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves swapping D'Angelo Russell for Andrew Wiggins. There were other players and draft picks included into the trade. But the keynote about the trade is the Golden State Warriors agreed to trade D'Angelo Russell to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a deal that included the Warriors receiving Andrew Wiggins back in return. What the Warriors will also receive is a 2021 top 3 protected first-round draft pick and a 2021 second-round pick. And they will send Jacob Evans and Omari Spellman to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're simply just going to be players on the roster unless they can develop their game this year. I actually like this trade for both teams. I like it from the standpoint that for the Minnesota Timberwolves, you get that point guard of the future that you've been looking for so long. You get someone, and honestly, here's the biggest thing about this trade, Scott, that nobody's talking about. This trade was really about doing something to make Karl Anthony Towns happy. That's what this is about, because he and D'Angelo Russell are great friends. They're going to put up great numbers with each other. I believe they're going to be a nice tandem. Now, they're not going to play much defense because they don't do that, but I believe it's going to be a nice tandem, and maybe the Minnesota Timberwolves can get going back in the right direction with D'Angelo Russell now being on the team with Karl Anthony Towns and them also adding a player like Malik Beasley. We'll have to see what these other guys, Jacob Evans and Omari Spellman, turn into. For the Golden State Warriors standpoint, I like Andrew Wiggins in the spot that he could be for that team what Harrison Barnes was when the Warriors dynasty first started in the 2014-2015 season. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are is you took the words out of my mouth. That's what you really did. I'm happy for both teams. I'm happy for Minnesota because, yeah, Towns has a guy that he really likes, a very good friend, so that keep him happy. You always want to keep your best player happy. So I love this trade for both teams. Wiggins isn't going to be expected to be the superstar at Golden State. He'll be able to fit in, and it doesn't hurt to have Steve Kerr. I actually think that's a great trade for both teams. And of all the trades that we've talked about today, I have to tell you, this is the one I'm really happy to talk about.
Yeah, this one is by far my favorite one as well. I also love the Clint Capella to Atlanta deal. I mean, I'm from Georgia. I'm not really a huge Hawks fan, but I want to see my teams do well, and I'm excited to see them move in the right direction. But this is a trade that I'm excited to see, and I really can't wait to see Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson back on the floor next year with Andrew Wiggins and also Draymond Green, and to see just how they're able to figure that whole system out with each other. But I will say this right now, I believe Andrew Wiggins doesn't have a choice but to find a way but to make this work, because if it doesn't work in Golden State, he will become a journeyman around the league. And he definitely doesn't want that for his career.
Oh, I think he's going to be fine. I really think that Wiggins will be fine. He's with Kerr, and he'll have some good players around. I think Golden State's having a tough year, no doubt about it. But they had a great run. I have no concern about it. Again, this is a trade I like for both sides. There are other trades that make sense, and there are other ones that don't. This one makes sense for both franchises.
And with that being said, we'll move on to our last trade that happened just a few minutes before the trade deadline ended on Thursday at 3 p.m., and that was the Battle of L.A., with the Lakers and Clippers being in an arms race to try to figure out who would acquire Marcus Morris from the New York Knicks. Well, the Clippers landed Marcus Morris in a 3-team deal involving them, the Knicks, and also the Washington Wizards. And what the Clippers received in return was Marcus Morris and Isaiah Thomas. Jerome Robinson from the Knicks will be going to the Wizards, and the Knicks will receive Mo Harkless and a 2020 first-round draft pick. And when I look at this deal, now, before I go further talking about the deal itself, Adrian Wojnarowski did report yesterday that Isaiah Thomas is expected to be waived once this deal is officially completed. He is not expected to be on the Clippers roster very much longer. But when I look at this trade, I just go, you know what? People are talking about the battle of Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Paul George. Well, this really was a battle of his front offices. Jerry West being in the Clippers front office, Steve Ballmer being a better owner than Jeannie Buss is, and Rob Pelinka still. He's done a nice job with this Lakers franchise as far as putting a nice team together and acquiring another superstar to go along with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But he's no Jerry West, and Jeannie Buss is no Steve Ballmer, and it's very telling to to see how the tides have changed in L.A. Long gone are the days of Dr. Jerry Buss and Donald Sterling, where Dr. Jerry Buss ran the Glamour franchise that nobody was willing to turn down, and Donald Sterling ran the franchise that everybody ran away from for a plethora of different reasons. Your thoughts?
My thoughts is Kawhi Leonard may have a statue in two places, Toronto and probably in front of the L.A. Clippers. He wins the third title with three different franchises, more power to him. I think the Clippers are in good shape. You're right. We talk about the L.A. theme where, you're talking about star power. Well, the Clippers made some bold moves. In fact, what's bolder is they got rid of Blake Griffin. Everybody thought that the franchise was in trouble, and they were better off because of unloading the guy and got a good return for him. But, yeah, I think that this is the Battle of L.A., Staples Center, until the Clippers get their own place eventually. More power to them. Again, you're talking about the big entertainment dollar in Southern California, and the Clippers made a splash move. But I'll tell you what, there aren't a lot of athletes I really care for in sports, especially this league. But I will tell you, I love Kawhi Leonard. He's another guy who's won everywhere he's gone, and you can never have enough of those. So I don't know if I'll say I'm rooting for the Clippers. My heart right now, if the Pistons are going to get anywhere, I certainly would like to see the Milwaukee Bucks win a championship. Whether they can perform in the playoffs is anybody's guess. Time will tell. But I definitely think that the Clippers did something to help themselves out, and time will tell whether or not this trade makes any sense. But, they've come a long way, that's for sure.
And once again, all they had to give up in this trade was Mo Harkless, who was averaging 3.4 points per game this year. They did not have to give up Lou Williams. They did not have to give up Montrezl Harrell, a good young player, Landry Shamet, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. They didn't have to give up any of their core pieces, and they added another core piece in Marcus Morris. And, Scott, I'm a Lakers fan. Of course, the unfortunate passing of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and the other 7 people who were in that horrific helicopter crash with them. I'd love to see the Lakers go out and win it for Kobe this year, but I'm not naive to the situation. I just know that right now that's not realistic. The Lakers, they don't have enough bench play. They don't have enough depth on that bench, and it's doing too much depending on LeBron James in his 17th year in the league and Anthony Davis, and that's just not going to be enough against a team like the Clippers, who are absolutely loaded. And there are other teams as well, like Denver and Utah, but the Clippers, I definitely believe that they are going to come out of the Western Conference.
Well, Marcus Morris proved that Christmas can happen in February, just so you know that, because he got the heck out of New York. So I guess being a Detroit guy, for some crazy reason, I would love to see this Isaiah Thomas sign with the Detroit Pistons so that we had the Isaiah Thomas thing covered. Will that ever happen? I don't know. I guess it's wishful thinking if anything has to do with it. But the biggest gift that Marcus Morris was, he got out of New York, went to L.A. I don't know. He's trading the subways with the freeways, the 101 versus the subway. I don't know what they are. But more power to him. He ended up landing in a good spot. I don't know what's going on with the Knicks. That'll be for another real and rare if you want to talk about it. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the NDL, the National Drama League.
Yes, I definitely agree with you on that. But that pretty much sums up our NBA trade deadline. As we said, we're waiting for more details to unfold with mookie-betts going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm under strong belief it's going to happen. Scott believes it's going to happen. But things are on a hold right now. We're just waiting to see them work out the other details to make this trade happen at this point.
All right. Well, Xavier, another job well done. This concludes this episode of the Real and the Rare. Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, along with
the X Factor, Xavier McKnight.
Hope you enjoyed this episode, folks, and we'll be back in a couple weeks for another edition. So, meanwhile, Xavier, well done. I'll be curious to see how a lot of these events play out. Meanwhile, on behalf of both of us, folks, have a great weekend. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.